Hi, good morning. My name's Louise. I am the editor of Drone Professional One. And this book came out at the beginning of the year. It comprises comments, best thinking, advice, best practice, and all sorts of things in relation to the drone technology. And it was there are chapters written by 16 professional drone experts from around the world. I've got one of those experts with me today. It's Robert Miller from the Eye Above. And hi, Rob.
Hi, Louise.
How's it? Thanks for joining me today.
No, pleasure.
Cool. I'll get straight on into the primary questions. But what is your background? I mean, what do you do?
It's always a very difficult question. My girlfriend actually cringes when people says, "What does your boyfriend do?" I guess the best description for what I do is I'm a tinker. If I find something that's interesting or something I want to do, I will throw myself at it, study it, and get involved. I've been in software development, I've been in health, in nutrition, and now I'm building drones.
Fantastic. I mean, what attracted you to the drone industry? I mean, why did that grab your attention?
It was actually an accident. I was visiting friends who were wardens at a game reserve, and I got to see firsthand what life on a reserve is like, a reserve that has rhinos. And I don't think the public appreciates how much of a war it is, and the fact that we're losing it.
Okay.
We have to change the way we're fighting the war, and drones are, in my opinion, definitely one of the ways we can do that.
Okay, that's interesting because I said to you earlier, I was chatting to Graham yesterday, and he experienced trying to use drones in the Kruger, I think it was. So I'd like to explore that more as we carry on with our chat just now. I mean, in your chapter, building a not-for-profit anti-poaching UAV from the ground up. Please expand on what you covered.
So we did everything the wrong way in the beginning. I was up at the reserve. I saw the rangers. The rangers all have PTSD. They don't sleep. They just sort of hover in light sleep, waiting for the radio to go off or a gunshot and to hear another rhino's been poached. We're losing our best people. So the obvious solution is let's put drones up. And when you're new to the industry, and I think even when you've been in the industry for a while, you try and buy something off the shelf. You look around, you look at what everyone else has done, you buy something off the shelf, it doesn't work for the same reasons that everyone else's didn't work. You make the mistake of trying to analyze what went wrong until you realize that that's how everyone got into trouble. And what you actually need to do is step back and say, what does a drone need to do to be able to succeed in this arena? And I think this is where people need to realize you can buy lots of drones off the shelf, okay? But drones are purpose-built devices. They're aircraft. They're good at one thing, one or two things, maybe, not everything. So you can build a drone that does one thing exceptionally well, or you can build a drone that does everything exceptionally badly.
I love that quote. I think it's a huge point to make because so many people think that you can solve everything with one type of drone, or that drones are going to solve everything anyway. I think that's a really important point, and it's a mistake people are making.
If you look at Air Forces has figured this out a long time ago. You don't have one type of aircraft. You have different types of aircraft that are designed for different roles. And when you're patrolling somewhere like the Kruger, you can't take a drone, put a camera on it, and just tell it to fly and hope you're going to stumble across someone. It's got to be a very, very strategic mission with a variety of drones working together, all optimized. So you might have 5-6 meter drones with very, very high resolution optics flying at 2,000-3,000 meters. And then you've got smaller patrol drones that are taking their cue from the bigger drones.
Okay. Yes. So you're talking about a multi-level response rather than like a singular level drone. Yeah. Okay. No, that sounds far more effective as well as in terms of using and applying the data in a far better way, a more efficient way.
So we kind of took a middle of the road approach. we started off designing a 3-meter drone, which is big compared to what anyone else has tried, because it had the payload capacity, it had the flight time, and it could handle the equipment to do a dual role. So it can fly with high enough resolution optics that it can actually pick up people at a distance, and then it can also go investigate and hover if need be. So it's a multi-role aircraft, but it's designed for a specific purpose.
Okay. Just as I'm just thinking straight off the top of my head, just as a thought, is it better rather to follow the animal and see what comes near it rather than scan the ground looking for people? Do you know what I mean?
So we identified that there's 3 mission profiles that a drone will have to do. Herd surveillance, where the drone literally follows the herds and protects it and monitors everything that's going on around the herd. Where you have short stretches of perimeters that are vulnerable, perimeter patrol, where the drones just fly those perimeters backwards and forwards. Ideally, 2 to 3 drones in overlapping patterns on those ones. And then what we call hunting mode, where an incident has occurred and the drone is supporting the rangers trying to see who's hiding behind rocks and bushes.
Okay. Okay. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's yes. Okay, that sounds like a much you're covering multiple bases there, rather than just looking for people.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So I mean, obviously you've been in consultation with the rangers as much to gain. Oh, because I mean that's something that comes out in your book. It seems like you've had multiple. There's a quote that you made that I think is just brilliant. Wisdom comes from experience, and experience is often is often a result of lack of wisdom. And I think that's marvelous. Yes. But it sounds like you've gathered in the wisdom of many to come to get your own design.
Yeah, yeah, and we've looked at what everyone else has done and is doing, and when you identify what is needed, you start to understand why people aren't getting the success they want. But if you just look at why they're not getting the success, you don't always get the clues that you need. So we may be wrong, but we think we understand exactly what it's going to take. Now, if you look at the list, it's quite a daunting task. We're still on airframe design. And interestingly enough, our airframe seems to be the correct decision because we're getting a huge interest from military around the world in this airframe.
Oh,
not that we necessarily want to be supplying military, but it's drawing attention because it's totally unique.
Okay.
If you look at the new Honda design for the taxi, the flying taxi, they've adopted a very similar system to us. Now,
okay.
It wouldn't be correct to say they copied us because I don't know how long they were doing it, but it is interesting that there are now 2 drones or 2 concepts that use the same configurations, ours and theirs.
Okay. Well, that must be quite satisfying from your side.
It is.
Definitely. I mean, I just, as I said, I think your story really leaps out in terms of partly the passion that you've got for this, but also, the multiple steps you've taken and equally the challenges you've faced. It's challenged you on multiple levels, hey?
It has. I had to learn essentially aerodynamic engineering, crash course. Not necessarily the maths.
Right.
But I had to learn all of the principles that are involved because I'm dealing with engineers on a daily basis, and I had to be able to get up to speed to keep up with them. I also realized very early on I can contribute to the process, and engineers tend to stick with what they know. So this is where one of the quotes in the book that I came up with came from. Quite often people will tell you it can't be done. Now, you need to learn whether that's really it can't be done or people are scared of change and doing something new. And a lot of the engineers that we worked with, we either stopped working with because they wouldn't try something new, or eventually they came around to the fact that there may be another way of doing it that's non-conventional, which is scary because you don't have anything to fall back on. You're building a drone, and someone said to me, how do they build a drone? Okay, like ours, they want to start producing them locally. I said, if I had known it was going to cost 5 million rand when I started, I might not have started down this road.
Oh, crumbs.
But what you realize is the second you put wings onto something, you no longer have a copter. Copters are easy, and you just take 4 little poles, put motors on them, you put a controller, and you fly. The second you put wings on, you're building an aircraft. It may be only 3-meter wingspan, but you are building an aircraft. And
Yes.
when you try build an aircraft with technology that doesn't exist and reinvent the wheel out of necessity, it's going to cost a lot of money, and you're going to get a lot of pushback from the industry.
Yes, I would imagine, hey. But I mean, I love the way you described that moment when you launched your prototype. I mean, you can feel the excitement and you holding the breath as you sort of chuck it up.
Well, the pilot was saying, well, you know, it'll fly, and it looks interesting, and it looks like it'll fly, and he picks it up and he says, here goes nothing. And that's not really confidence inspiring.
Oh my word. No, I think there's some core lessons that come out of what you've covered in there. I mean, what do you think are some of the sort of really key points that you would, if someone was thinking of designing something, whether for conservation or for any other use, what key message would you pass on?
So I think when we started learning how to use SolidWorks, the engine, the CAD software, they said something that was quite profound. You need to understand what you're building before you start trying to build it. So if you don't know what you're building and how it's going to work, you won't be able to build it. Or you'll spend a lot of wasted time trying to figure it out. So you have to get all your ducks in a row. Or maybe I should say geese in a row, because they fly better. But once you've got an understanding of what you need, you can then start bringing in the right people and skills to actually put it into practice. So understand what you need, embrace new technology. As we've shown, CAD technology and CAD simulations are exceptionally accurate these days. You can get yourself 90% there just in CAD software without having to build anything.
Okay.
Not saying that CAD time is cheap. About 2 million Rand of our money that we've invested is just CAD, is the equivalent of CAD time on it. And we've pushed CAD software to its absolute limits. I mean, there have been times where I'll click a button, watch the egg timer, go watch TV, go to sleep, wake up, make myself some coffee, and watch the egg timer for another hour.
Goodness me, okay. So you've been really pushing the brains of the software then, as you say. Yeah.
So the way we designed our structure and our wing core pushes SolidWorks to its absolute limit. It really does. We've actually used 3 CAD packages in conjunction with each other, and we've leveraged the strength of each package to build components and then bring them all together in SolidWorks. And I must say,
sorry, carry on.
SolidWorks have been absolutely invaluable. If it hadn't been for them, I don't think we would be where we are with the help and support they've given us. So we've been lucky from that point of view that being a non-profit, people are prepared to help us.
No, I mean, it sounds like, wow, what a mission you've had. I mean, you've been integrating different software. I mean, this is an incredible undertaking that you've taken on.
Yeah. And we are ready with the structures we've built. We've got some large aircraft manufacturers looking at us and saying, well, initially they looked at us and said, it can't work. Forget it, it'll never work. Now they're looking at us and saying, that's interesting, maybe it can work.
Knocking on your door now and saying, can we come in, please? We'd like to talk to you. Yeah. Goodness me. Oh, it must be, I mean, there must have been a point when you must have thought, gosh, but now you must be starting to reap some of the benefit of your hard effort because of something like that, where people that previously said no are now sort of saying, oh, let's have a look.
Well, if you look, yesterday I posted on LinkedIn, I don't know if I can actually share the screen here, but the design for our flap mechanism. So one of the things that we identified is, and it's kind of a conundrum here and a bit of a contradiction. When you take something into the bush, like a drone, it has to be rugged, strong, simple, and exceptionally high-tech. Now, those are contradictory terms. Things like the airspeed tube, if you're taking off from the ground, will clog up eventually. So every step of the way, you find yourself adding more complexity and more work to the drone. So we end up with an airspeed tube that actually pulls back into the fuselage when the drone's taking off. to protect
Oh,
it.
wow.
Um,
Okay.
that is 3 weeks worth of engineering. At the same time, you've got your FPV camera, which is also vulnerable for stones being kicked up by the front propellers. So the same mechanism that pulls the tube back also rolls the camera up into the fuselage. And as you go, you just find that this drone is doing things that nothing else can do, but there's spin-off technologies all the way with everything we create. Like all of our control surfaces have no external horns. Everything is controlled from within the wings. There's nothing that can be snagged on anything around, which is something you need in the bush, because it's very, very easy to catch on something.
Yes.
The fact that
That's
our
really
wings...
cool. Sorry.
Sorry, yeah. The fact that our wings fold. Our wings don't unclip. They actually fold under the aircraft on the first version. The second version automatically lowers its wings and folds. So
Okay.
what we had to also look at is points of failure. So every time you unplug a plug or connector, you introduce a point of failure. So we had to design around the fact that you never ever unplug anything. You fold things, but nothing ever unplugs. So the electronic circuitry is always protected.
Okay. Goodness me, you really have identified all sorts of different ways of trying to resolve problems and make this a complex but easy aircraft.
Yeah.
I mean, you were just making me think when you said all the cabling and stuff is inside, all the controls are inside. I mean, it's a bit like the high-end tri-bikes, triathlon bikes.
Yeah.
There's no cabling, there's nothing that needs to sticking out.
No.
They're looking for aerodynamics, of course, but
yeah.
And have you done any tests to show it to, for example, some rangers, the rangers from maybe the reserve that you were at before, or have you had any feedback from the conservation rangers themselves?
So we were supposed to have a prototype flying already, but the lockdown put an end to that plan. So what we're doing is the original prototype was a very simple version. Half of all the control surfaces and some of the fancy modifications weren't integrated. So we're using this time to complete all of those systems. And when we do print the prototype in a week or two's time, hopefully, everything will be in it. So the idea is to produce 3 prototypes, one for testing here, one to deploy in Pilanesberg with another anti-poaching organization with drones, and one to send up to Hoedspruit to start testing. Now, these are 2 meter, not 3 meter. So one of the challenges was we always wanted to use additive manufacturing and 3D printing to produce these, because if you want to simplify maintenance, you make everything unclippable. You make everything modular, everything components, and everything can be unclipped. That means that your maintenance manual goes from 100 pages or 1,000 pages down to 10 or 15 pages. And you replace certified modules when you need to that have service life. So it's much easier for them to maintain in the field. So one of the problems was as soon as a company in Joburg called Mentis brought in the first HP, multi-jet fusion machine, we could start producing cost-effective complete wing segments, but only on a 2 meter basis. It's not big enough, unfortunately, to print a 3 meter. So we decided to push ahead with the 2 meter because we can learn a lot by flying it now. And at the same time, we're designing new technologies to actually print the wings on the 3 meter in sections that just clip together.
Okay.
So one thing that's come out of this virus, and I think for everyone, is additive manufacturing and 3D printing has taken a forefront in the war against this virus with printing mask adapters, Venturi valves. And we've been leveraging this technology for a while. I think we're one of the only drone manufacturers that is leveraging it to the extent that we are, that nearly everything in this drone is 3D printed. And it's an opportunity for people who don't necessarily have manufacturing and machining skills to build drones. Because once you come out of CAD to something like an HP multi-jet fusion machine, you have a finished part that comes out of the machine.
Sure. Okay.
So
the innovation here is staggering.
Yeah.
What you've done. Yeah. Okay. But I mean, that sort of leads on to the next point I was going to ask you about, is how has COVID-19 affected perhaps you, or how have you had a role in that? Equally, how do you see it's affecting the drone industry positively or negatively, or how the drone is helping, the response to COVID-19? Sort of three questions in one.
So we're very lucky. We have three engineers involved. We have an engineer, a doctor of aeroelastic engineering, Dr. Becca van der Kek, who is our aerodynamic consultant. Then we have Coral Crick, who is a mechanical engineer, and David van der Merwe, who are both, is also a mechanical engineer. Now, Coral is an absolute wizard when it comes to computer simulation. He's done all of our flow dynamic computations. So what we realized is we have enough skill and expertise to start helping with venturi valves and some of the non-mechanical devices that are used for constant pressure with patients, COVID-19 patients. So we took a 2-week detour from the drone. We took some of the technology that was already available on the web, open source, and we looked at other ways of integrating it into systems that could be used by hospitals that are very cheap to produce. So where we are with that at the moment is Mentis is printing the first prototypes. Those should be shipping today, and then those will go to doctors in the field to start testing immediately.
Brilliant.
But it's the same principles. Once you understand CAD and you've got the right team, you can do anything with it. So
yes,
from that point of view, we were, sorry, yes?
Sorry. No, no, carry on, sorry.
So from that point of view, we were able to step up very, very quickly and use our skills to design equipment. What has happened as well is the demand for 3D printed parts has forced Mentis to upgrade their machines. So their capacity has increased. So we now have an HP production site in South Africa that can rival most of the world. And that's quite fundamental for the drone industry and for all other industries, because there are lots of technologies. There's selective laser sintering, which is a powder-based system, and then there's a multi-jet fusion system. The advantage of the multi-jet fusion is it's incredibly quick and incredibly cheap. It produces a part in about 6 hours that would take you on a little FDM printer 2 days to print.
Gosh, okay. It's quite different.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got limited knowledge of the 3D printing, but from what you're saying, it does sound like this crisis is kind of, I mean, to me, it sounded like 3D printing was still a bit over there sort of thing, but it sounds like it's bringing it to the fore in terms of the value in the turnaround of producing parts or kits or systems that can now be used. Yeah.
And we're seeing companies like VW and one of their manufacturing companies, as they work with Gendermark, retooling production plants to deal with coronavirus, and 3D printing is actually playing a big role in that retooling.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a nice positive, positive aspect to come out of the crisis. Wow. Okay. I mean, you must have seen how drones are being used in some shape or form to respond, whether it's disinfecting, whether it's just monitoring or policing people's movements, or people have suggested using it for checking temperatures and things like that. Do you think that that's all the drones might be able to do under this circumstance, or do you think there's anything different that can come out of this?
I think the temperature checking is a very, very crucial area. So where we're saying we don't have a full lockdown, even though some areas are under full lockdown, the more informal areas are still business as usual, because lockdown's almost impossible. What we don't know is how many of the people walking around have temperatures or are showing symptoms. With the thermal technology on the drones, on the high-end drones, you can fly over an area and get an accurate count of who's hot and who's not. So while the drone may not be able to apprehend the person and say, go home, the drone is giving you a bird's eye view of how bad the problem is and how many people are spreading. Or
so
people
you could
who've
use
got
information
symptoms.
to target teams. Sorry, yeah. You can use that information then to target where the test teams go. We've got all these roving test teams now in the country.
Yeah.
So you can actually say, well, look, you guys need to go over to this part of the area than the other part.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I have been wondering whether or not that isn't, because I mean, what do the authorities do with the information? You kind of, the sort of worst case is they blast in, take you out your house, take you somewhere to get tested, you come back with a stamp on you. You know, the sort of worst, I don't mean to be, you know, joke too badly here, but, you know, you sort of could conjure up some really awful scenarios. You know, what does this mean? And then people get ostracized, and then this happens. You know, you're just sort of curious.
Well,
how could that be?
If the studies coming out of California and America and some of the other countries are anything to go by, the number of people who got this virus and didn't even know they had it is way over the number of people that have tested positive. So most people, it seems, are not going to show a symptom. They're just going to shrug this off. But we still don't know how big the problem is and the extent. And it certainly helps if we can say, right, you've got it, you need to go home. Or send a team to an area and say, there's 100 people who are showing temperature spikes walking around in the street. You need to get more control in that area. I don't think the drones necessarily engaging with people closely is a good idea. They're dangerous. And the exact concerns that the CIA has about drones in proximity to people comes into play. I also think copters are being misused. They're very attractive options because they're cheap and they're easy to fly, but they don't have the flight time. If you really want to start getting the kind of data we need, you need fixed wings. You need VTOL fixed wings that can take off anyway, can fly, they've got a long flight time, and they can actually do a proper job instead of every 10 to 15 minutes having to land to change batteries.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a classic example, as we were saying earlier, about the wrong drone being used. You know, thinking, well, it's a drone, it can therefore help and solve the problem. But yeah, no, you're right. I think it does need to be fixed wing at higher altitude. Yeah. Yeah. No, it'd be interesting to see how this all unfolds. You know, how things may change for the, you know, like I know people are talking about deliveries, and this seems a bit more acceptable from a humanitarian perspective rather than a purely commercial thing, you know, like delivering foods and medicines. And I think Zipline have been collecting lab samples and things like that. Yeah. So there are some alternative uses coming out. Yeah, and Zipline is a company, Zipline is a company that looked at what was required and built a drone, albeit a big, boxy, ugly drone, that is very effective at doing what it needs to do. It was built for a purpose, and it performs that purpose really well. No, it does, hey. I wonder what they think about you saying it was a big, big ugly. But then I've seen pictures of your drone. It's a very attractive looking drone. So, yeah, no, because I mean, we were talking just off camera now as well, that, you know, the thing that concerns me, and you said it also, that perhaps some drones are being used inappropriately, it is the spying element is being enforced. You know, that people do generally joke, oh, well, you got a drone, you can spy on your neighbor. But now this is spying potentially for another reason, maybe for safety, but people may still think, oh, you know, we're being spied on. I think the problem is that the second you put up a drone, you put it up with the purpose of being able to see, which means it has a camera. The second it has a camera, it is essentially spying on people, intentionally or unintentionally. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, perhaps there'll be protocols that come out of this, you know, in terms of how to use drones effectively, and equally perhaps educate people that this isn't for a bad reason, or they're not being spied on per se. Yeah. But that might be quite a media challenge, I think, you know, to educate. Yep. Are you going to be putting up information about your progress as you do all your test flights? I know I can appreciate some of it will be sensitive, but are you going to be, you know, if people wanted to sort of see what was going on, are they going to be able to follow you in that regard? Yeah. So we neglected the website, unfortunately, because we didn't have the resources. With the amount of work we took on, it was just all hands doing what had to be done. Now we're going to start getting the website up to date. We're going to start the progress, the bold progress, where we are, what to do, how the flights are going, what changes we've had to make. So within the next few weeks, people will be able to follow it on the website. Oh, excellent. No, that's really cool. Because I must say, I'd love to see how this has turned out. Because, like I said, I mean, you sort of, the way in which you write your chapter, you end it on, you know, here goes nothing. And you come, oh, what's the next chapter? You know, I mean, I think you can write a whole book on your experience here, from the emotional level, from the belief level, from the financial, the technical level, the engineering you've done. I think it's a hugely important story to get out there, to be honest with you.
But I think also what's really important about our story is they say that you can't just build an aircraft, that it's impossible unless you have all of the training, the expertise, the manpower, but it's not impossible. If you surround yourself with the right people, you beg, borrow skills, and you trade and barter, you can actually do a lot more than you thought you could do. And we'd like to see drones, not only drones, but the technology around drones expanding. So someone said to me, they're an African company, they need to build drones, they've set themselves up to build drones, but they don't have a design. What can they do? I said, build the technology around the drones. Things like landing mats for drones, QR code beacons for drones to land on. I said, there's so many areas that people could be focusing on. Everyone wants the glory of, we built a flying drone, but there's other areas that are being neglected. So I think there's huge opportunity in the sector beyond just the drone itself.
Oh, absolutely. I think you nail a point there, because I mean, you know, you can also look at it that we do have some of the toughest regulations that do make commercial operations of drones difficult to establish. So I mean, and as you say, everybody's focusing on, I want to be a pilot, or I want to fly for this, but there is enormous potential, as you rightly say, to design the other aspects of it. No, it's good advice. Yeah. I'm just checking. I had so many questions for you. I was just checking. I've got them all done. I think we could probably have another chat another time, I think, if you're up for it, because I just think there's so much that you've got to say, and such an important story. But in the meantime, how would people be able to follow you, or be able to connect with you if they wanted to find out more about your progress or get some advice from you?
They can either go to the website, which is www.theiabove.co.za, or they can mail me at robert@theiabove.co.za.
Okay. And can I get hold of you on LinkedIn?
Yes, Robert Miller on LinkedIn. Look for the Robert Miller that has lots of drone pictures.
Okay, good one. I'll put those links in the comments and at the back of the video as well. So yeah. I don't know, you can see your cat is in the background there playing on the window. So it was sorry?
The joys of working from home. I had a conference call the other day, a very serious one, and I'm sitting here, and suddenly you just see two ears appear like this, climbing up, and the cat's climbing my shoulder, turns around, looks into the camera. Everyone was in hysterics.
Excellent, I love it. Oh, excellent. Well, thank you very much to you and your cats for joining us.
Pleasure.
If I can,
thank you.
Thank you. I'll just say cheers to everybody who's watching. Thank you very much for joining us today and for watching. There will be some more videos to come. And if you know, the whole point of this book was to interest people in the drone industry, that there is more than meets the eye. And I think Robert's story today really covers that. This is available on Amazon in Kindle or paperback format, and keep an eye out for more videos. And in the meantime, please keep yourselves well and keep safe. Cheers.